so happy that everyone's here. I want to introduce Dr. Jason. He was my professor and also my mentor, so I really do hope that you guys enjoy him.
Thank you, thank you. Jason's fine, okay with that. We just want to be family here and be able to enjoy this, this lecture on stress leadership. Now, the way I came to the term leadership over stress management is it brings it up a level. That word management means that, okay, we're just going to manage the status quo and we're going to keep things going as they're going as I manage it. Leadership is taking that and bringing it to the next level on how can I reduce this, get rid of it, change it, make it better. So our talk today on stress leadership will work over the stresses that we go through that we're usually telling ourselves in our head. All right, so the stress process. We've all been through it. We're all going through it. We're all doing something right now. You're probably stressed about something that you might need to be doing later, maybe a card game. It happens. So the process, there's an event that happens in your life, whether it be something that you were in a car and got cut off by somebody, whether you woke up in the morning and you stubbed your toe, whether you got good news, whether that scratch-off ticket had $10 in it. Okay, so these things are all little events that happen, and once an event happens in your life, first thing that goes on is the thought process. What does it mean? Is it good? Is it bad? So as we go through those thoughts in our head, we try to make decisions on how we should respond to this. Who in here understands this? Who in here keeps going through this daily? Oh yeah. Do you ever win with that voice in your head? No.
Since I'm on both sides, yeah. I win.
I'm winning and losing, yes, yes. But so we have those thoughts, and those thoughts bring us to an action. Who in here has done an action that when they think about it 2 hours, 5 hours, a week later, they go, oh man, that was not a good idea. I was doing it this morning when I was thinking about this lecture. It's not a good idea to have a conversation with myself right before I get in front of a group of people I've never met, and I'm going to talk about stress, which I'm putting myself in stress. So yes, bring you back a little bit. I am a chiropractor that practices with the nervous system. But just because I practice as a chiropractor doesn't mean I don't do other things outside of my life with everything else. So as a chiropractor, we look at getting the body to communicate from brain to body and body back to brain through the nervous system, and we do a lot of that work at the spine. But I took it a step further, and I'm saying, well, what communication are we sending in the first place? What's going in our head that we're sending to our body, or our receiving signals into our head, whether it be visual, whether it be verbal, whether it be from tactile, and how are we processing those so our bodies work better and our stress works better. This one up here, the brain and stress. So all our stresses that we deal with life typically are exacerbated or raised up in the stress because of what's going on in the head. Now the first thing, like we said, we had the event, then everything was our thought process. Our thought process here runs through these three areas. You have an emotional section of your brain, you have a logical section of your brain, and you have a creative section of your brain. Most people know about the bottom two there. Logical, what side of the brain? Who can take a guess?
Left.
Left side, all right. So left side of the brain, which then, what side of the brain is the creative or artistic side?
Right.
Right side. Okay. Have you heard of the emotional brain?
No.
Okay. The emotional brain, known as the limbic system, it is a primitive portion of the brain. It's the first one to form. Many of us in here have had children. We know that they cry when they need something, even though their brain hasn't developed yet. So that emotional brain, our emotions, our logic, and our creativity are all linked together. Who in here makes rational decisions? Who thinks they make rational decisions? Our decisions are always rational, right, to us. But we just brought up before that you make a decision sometimes, and then a few days later you're going, that wasn't a good decision. You made it in a stressful environment, you made it at a stressful call without allowing the situation to happen and realizing that it might have been taken care of a different way. I want you to think of a good emotion and a bad emotion. Think of a good emotion and a bad emotion. Who wants to give me one?
Temper.
Temper. Okay, who wants to give me a good one then?
Love.
Love? Okay, so we got love, and we'll go with bad temper, right? Because temper can be, but let's usually go in bad temper. We've all been mad before, we've all had a bad temper, and that's an emotion. When you're in that bad temper, we start to think of how we should respond to that. So we start using our logical brain based on the emotion that we're in. And then we get really creative with the things that we need to do. Then later, when that temper, the bad temper's gone, and you're in the feeling of love, you're in a new emotion, and you sometimes think back to what you made before, and you go, that was not a good idea. So every time we make a decision, before you make that decision, you should check to see where your emotional setting is in your brain at that time. Because your logical and creative mind will always work based on the setting of your emotion at that point. All right, who wants to share something about themselves where they know that whether it's good, whether they see it's bad, that they've run across this before?
I said my grandson does my income tax, and he does it all over the world for a huge company, but he lost everything I had. He moved and he lost all of it. And I have been having to call everybody and getting them to send us back W-2s and 1099s. Anyway, this morning I was so stressed out calling all these people, and I go in to, I really was, I was like out of it. I go in to wash the dishes so I can wash the dog in the sink, and the phone rang, and I go in, answer the phone. About 5 minutes later, my husband came in, he said, and I said, what's the matter? He said, the kitchen and the hall are flooded. I didn't turn the water off. I was so numb from being mad. I don't know what kind of emotion I had, but you talk about stress.
We usually remember the bad times more than the good times, right? The mistakes tend to stand out a little bit more because you start thinking, that added a lot of stress to my life. Why did I do that? So my stress this morning was coming here and speaking to you all. I'm not excluded from this process. I'm human like everybody else, so it comes through. The point is when you start having this emotional change within your body for whatever reason, you have to sit back and realize that, is this a good time to deal with this stress under the current emotion of it? All right? Anybody else have something that they want to share, maybe a good story?
I just moved to John Knox this week, so that's stress. I'm still unpacking.
Your name, I'm sorry?
Mary.
Mary, nice to meet you, Mary. So where did you move from?
Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, so it wasn't too far of a trip as far as temperature-wise, but you're in a new place.
Yeah, I've moved from about 1,700 square feet to not quite 1,500.
Okay.
Plus I live with a friend, and we're 2 controlling women, and we have 1 million cartons and movers and nonsense. So
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So how did that stress go for you?
It's ongoing.
What would you have changed so far?
Well, I was going to say another mover, but that happened.
That happened, yes. You can't change that. That's an excellent leeway into the next portion here. When you make a bad decision, when you make a good decision, and you start thinking later on, maybe I shouldn't have said that, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe I should have made a better decision, can you go back and change it? No, I know I can't. I've tried. It doesn't work. You can't go back and change it. Does anybody in here ever constantly play over in their head for days on something that they did a few days ago and should have corrected?
Yes.
Yeah? You want to share? No. Okay, that's fine. At least I asked. So is it something recent?
All the time.
It's all the time? So techniques. let's go over some techniques that you can do or employ immediately to be able to start helping you out with this. Good emotions can also lead to these same problems, where you make decisions when you're really happy, and then when you come back to normal level, you're like, oh, I spent too much money. You know that? I've done that. I shouldn't have bought that. Oh, it was probably not a good idea. But either way, whether it's good, something that you perceive as good, something that you perceive as bad at the time, before you make a decision, ask yourself, what emotional mood am I in? So you're going to want to stop for a moment, take a breath, nice deep breaths, maybe 4, 5, 6 breaths, more like a meditation type of breathing. If anybody in here has done that or practiced that, see what emotion you're in, pay attention to it, and decide, is now the time to work with this emotion to make the decision that I'm about to go down? Or is it something I need to put on the table? Allow my emotion to change until I put it into the one that I want it to be when I make the decision. Because you're not going to get away from your logical and creative brain and not be in an emotional point at that time, whether it's calm, that's an emotion, whether it's comfortable, whether it's happy, whether it's just, I'm okay with everything the way it's going. These are all emotional. So you want to get yourself in that level mood. All right, any questions for me?
The events you're talking about, are they the things that happen unplanned, or are they, you make plans for some big event, you know, and then you go through this?
It's all of the above. Any event. The event of coming here was an event. You came in with a certain outlook on what am I going to learn here, but you didn't have control over what I was going to speak about. So you have to then decide, is it what I wanted to hear? Is it not what I wanted to hear? But you didn't have control over life unfolding in front of you, per se. You can have a decision that I'm going to drive from here to a store, and on your way there, a road is closed, and you now have to take a detour. It can be frustrating. You might then get mad or decide to turn or not pay attention, or I'm going to get lost, or all these emotions start coming in. But the point is that hiccup happened.
So how do you let go of the stress in the evening so your head isn't so busy?
Wow, wonderful question. Wonderful question. First thing you have to ask is, don't try to stop the thoughts. You don't have control over that. Your brain is an organ, just like your heart is an organ, just like your legs and muscles in there have organs, just like you have a liver. And our brain's main focus is to do its function of solving problems for us. So it likes to do that. So when you're laying there in bed at night, it's like, oh, it's quiet. Let's try to solve a problem. So its thoughts are just going to pop in there. You don't have control over the thoughts that come in there. We think we do, but if you pay attention to it, you go with yourself, why did I think of that? So as that thought pops into your head, pay attention to it, but don't engage it. What that means is when that thought pops into your head of, I have a bill to pay, don't make a plan on how to pay it. Realize that you're laying in bed, it's 2 in the morning, it's dark out, you're comfortable, warm, a roof over your head, and there's no way that you can pay that bill at that point anyway. So you let it go and realize that you can do it the next day.
You don't get up and write a note.
If you have to, if that's something that you need to do so you don't forget, yes. But try to allow the brain to do that when the event is happening earlier in the evening instead of trying to do it while you're sleeping. Yes?
What's frustrating for me is when the stress is caused by something I have no control over. And, you know, I just have to live with it and somehow figure out how to deal with it. Not long ago, I was diagnosed with MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment, which is short-term memory loss. So, you know, it's easy to forget where I put things and what I was supposed to do and where I was supposed to go. And then it's compounded by the fact when you talk to people and you say something to them and they say, oh, you already told me that. And so it's just the stress of living with this situation that I don't know. You know, I've gone on antidepressants occasionally and the anti-anxiety, but it's just, you know, dealing with outside forces that you have no control over, and that's very stressful.
Oh, yes, yes. It's very, very stressful that we run into. So the best advice that I can give you with that is you need to be able to have somebody in this room here or somebody outside of this room that you can share with. So when you can share with somebody what you are currently dealing with on that stress, and you're allowed to let it out, you're allowed to give it off to somebody else to understand where you are, just having that understanding of a friend will be able to help you move forward. Maybe help you also come up with some abilities of always put something in the same place every time. So this way when you can't find it, you can have a list somewhere of this is where I typically keep it, and then you can come back to that spot and hopefully it's there.
Well, I'll tell you, I could not live without Post-it notes.
Me neither. In front of my desk at my office, I have a bunch of them stuck on the wall. Every time I'm like, I need to remember something and I don't have an electronic way to record it, I write on a Post-it and I stick it where I will run into it when I can get it down onto an electronic form so I don't forget.
I tend to say something or do something that's taken completely the wrong way, so that the person's unhappy with me, but I've been told, let it go. And it's like, shouldn't you clarify what you meant or what you were intending, but just let it go, and then they stay mad.
It's the intent behind it. So, and let me explain and elaborate for you. You can explain something to somebody, and if they don't understand it and get mad at you, that's their choice. You can then go forward and try to explain it better to make them feel more comfortable, but you're trying to also do it to make yourself feel more comfortable. Okay, so your intent is, I've got to make them like me again because they didn't understand me the first time. So that's what it means by you have to let it go. You can't control somebody else's emotions. I heard a long time ago, and it stuck with me. It was kind of at the beginning processes of me going through this stuff, and it said, what somebody else thinks of you is none of your business. And I'm probably sure some of you heard that before, but that's just showing that you can try to speak and communicate the best way you can, but what they choose to take, it's always going to be from their emotional mood. What emotion were they in when you told them? If they were in a bad emotion, what you tell them is going to input into their brain in a bad way. If they're in a good emotion when you're speaking to them, it'll input in a good way. So it might be timing. Find out how they're doing that day before you speak. And if they're doing well and doing good, then you know you have the opportunity to tell them something and they'll receive it better. I thank you all for joining me today.